In 1999, Warner Bros. Released The Iron Giant, which tells the story of an unlikely friendship between a 60-foot alien robot and a 9-year-old boy. The result was a cult classic that raised the bar for animated stories. If you've watched The Iron Giant, you might not remember everything that happened, but I'd bet you remember how it made you feel. Devastatingly sad. In 2008, Pixar released WALL-E, which follows the titular robot WALL-E through a cautionary tale of consumerism. It was another spectacular hit. Many critics consider it Pixar's single best accomplishment. Just by hearing the name WALL-E now, our hearts melt a little as we're reminded of this tear-jerking journey. Jumping forward to 2024, DreamWorks brought us The Wild Robot. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, I immediately thought of how unforgettably emotional The Iron Giant and WALL-E were. If history has told us anything, this meant The Wild Robot was going to be gut-wrenching. And sure enough, it was. The story of Roz the motherly robot was a masterpiece that broke audiences everywhere. Considering this trio of heartbreaking robot movies, a saying comes to mind. 1 is chance, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern. I believe that we have found ourselves a pattern, a hidden truth. There is something uniquely sad about a robot's story. But doesn't this seem entirely counterintuitive? A robot's nothing more than sophisticated code with a metal shell. They aren't even alive, so why is it that robot stories consistently leave audiences in tears? Why do robots break our hearts? Humans have an incredibly strong sense of justice. If we see something we think is morally wrong, we will feel it in our souls to correct it, to amend it, or to bring it to justice. This universal truth resonates so deeply in humans that it makes up the heart of many of our favorite stories. Think of superheroes. They're our best vessels for stopping corruption and bringing justice to situations that nobody else could save. And they better save the day, because everyone loves a happy ending. When justice can't be achieved, it leaves behind a painful hole in the audience's hearts. Even worse, what about an injustice? Nobody wants to see the innocent meet a fate they don't deserve. That is heartbreaking. Understanding this fundamental rule of justice is the first step in finding out why these damn robots keep coming back in theaters just to rip our hearts out again and again. Robots are innocent. Take WALL-E for instance. His innocence manifests itself through his naive curiosity. There's something undeniably innocent about finding a diamond ring and tossing the jewel aside in favor of its much more fascinating case. This type of innocence is a result of his ignorance. After all, he's a robot programmed to collect trash. Why should he know the value of a diamond ring? Why should he think that his dream of finding love is hopeless? What's important to realize is that his obliviousness does not call for his misfortune. Just because he doesn't know how cruel the world can be doesn't mean he deserves to find out. WALL-E is an incredibly innocent character, and for this reason we can't help but root for him, even with the odds stacked against him. Like WALL-E, Roz is blissfully unaware of the reality of her environment. From the moment she enters the wilderness, she is immediately rejected, ridiculed, and ravaged, even though all she wants to do is help. Immediately, we see this injustice and develop sympathy for her. She isn't coded to withstand the hardships of the wilderness. She's coded to farm corn or clean kitchens or some other menial task that a human might ask of her. So when she tries applying her kindness first philosophy in a place where compassion gets you killed, we can't help but pity her for trying. The Iron Giant might be the most innocent of them all. From the way he mindlessly stumbles into danger, to the way he mirrors Hogarth's actions and words, all the way to how he questions death and souls, watching the Iron Giant is like watching a massive toddler. They even compare him to a little kid in the movie, and what is more innocent than a child? But wait a second, isn't he a weapon capable of mass destruction and a threat to everyone's safety? What's innocent about a machine of war? The question of the Iron Giant's innocence is a major theme of the movie. As they come to find out, he's simply programmed to respond to violence with violence. It's an automatic defense mechanism. That word automatic is important to consider. It simply comes down to his hardwiring, his predefined nature. The inherent innocence of a robot comes from the fact that they don't actually have any say at all. They are confined to their code. Innocence is step 1 in the robot warfare against our hearts. As I mentioned a moment ago, a robot's nature is predetermined. In theory, therefore, a story about a robot should be very boring. A robot has no passion, they don't laugh, they don't grieve, they don't question the war they're fighting. they just shoot. Any deviation from their hardwired purpose is a sign of defectiveness and a call for immediate repair. However, this rigid expectation for what a robot's nature is helps us rationalize abstract ideas in incredibly moving ways. I want to take a moment to really strip these three stories down to their cores, because I think it can help us get closer to the answer we're looking for. The Iron Giant is not just about a robot's new friend, it's about anyone's ability to choose their own destiny. Wally is not just about a robot's quest for a partner, it's about how no dream is ever too big. The Wild Robot is not just about a robot and her adopted son. It's about a parent's unconditional love. All of these stories have deeply profound messages, but they're all plagued with one challenging commonality: abstraction. How do you depict the infinite freedom of a choice, the limitlessness of a dream, or the boundlessness of a parent's love? How do you capture such immeasurable messages? Learning from these robots, I say we play into our weaknesses. In my opinion, ideally speaking, a story will have a purpose long before a character is ever thought of. Whatever that purpose is will dictate the characters used to achieve it, or at least give a rough guideline. There are strengths and weaknesses to every type of character. At first glance, it might seem obvious to play into strengths. If a story's purpose is about the horrors of war, they'll probably have a soldier as the main character. If a story's purpose is about coming of age, it makes sense to tell it through the eyes of an angsty preteen. But what about those three aforementioned purposes that are distinctly hard to grasp? Let's start with the Iron Giant. Like we just established, the writers are challenged with telling a story about the infinite freedom to choose who you are. Playing into strengths tells us to pick a character that, well, makes choices for themselves. An artist makes choices, a president makes choices, every human ever makes choices, so I guess we're writing our story about a human, any human. The beauty of art is that there's no right or wrong answer, and there are countless fantastic movies of humans choosing their own destiny, but playing into strengths in this case doesn't really help us narrow down our options, and it doesn't give us any particularly unique perspective. So what if we play it into our weaknesses? On the topic of freedom and destiny, what is the last type of character that comes to mind? I think you guessed it, a robot. In the first step of innocence, we established that a robot's nature is limited to its code, a rigid series of zeros and ones. They are innocent because they don't have a say. So when making a story about the infinite freedom to choose who you are, the perfect candidate to measure freedom is one that theoretically shouldn't have any freedom at all. What's so powerful about the Iron Giant is ultimately his ability to go against his nature, against his code. The humans wanted to see him as a weapon. They never gave him a chance, yet he didn't let his predestined fate control him. Even though everyone knows a robot doesn't have a say, he chose anyway. He wanted to be Superman, so despite it all, he saved the day. This contrast from our expectations is what was so touching, and it showed us that if a gun can choose not to shoot, then maybe there really is no limit to our destinies. Let's apply this same thought process to Wally. No dream is too big. Playing into strengths has us think of classic dreamers, but instead let's go down the weakness route. Who doesn't dream? Robots. So what if we put a broken down trash bot in the middle of a dystopian wasteland and tease him with the outlandish idea that he can someday find love? How's that for a big dream, Wally? Good luck beating those odds. Oh, he did it. The robot found love. Once again, it's incredibly moving to see a robot defy its nature. The last thing we'd expect this trash bot to do is find a girlfriend, yet he did it against all odds. It's the contrast from our expectation that melts our hearts. If a robot responsible for collecting trash can pursue his dreams, then maybe there is no dream too big. Lastly, the Wild Robot wants to showcase the boundlessness of a parent's love. Strengths tell us that being a mother requires maternal instincts, the ability to improvise, and, oh yeah, a reproductive system. What has none of those? Robots. The perfect choice to play into weaknesses. So let's burden a highly analytical, emotionally flat robot with the responsibility to raise a gosling. Surely there is no way that these two form an inseparable relationship that transcends all logic and can only be explained as love, right? Right? Bit by bit, Roz gradually rewrites her own code in order to stay up to the task. She does things that no robot would ever do, because being a mother means making choices that don't follow standard logic. Being a mother requires sacrifices that no combination of zeros and ones would ever think to make. So when we see Roz abort her entire programming just to watch Bright Bill fly, or when we see her ask to have just one memory kept with her, we can't help but notice the contrast from what we expected and what we see, and it breaks our hearts. So beyond just innocence, it's the profoundness of going against one's nature that hits us so hard. It's the contrast from our mundane expectations of robots and the cathartic ways they tear them down. Before we continue, I just want to take a quick second to ask if you've liked and subscribed. I never thought I'd say this, especially in just 4 short months, but I think it's time we start pushing for that 100k milestone. If you want to help achieve this, liking and subscribing is the best way to show support. Not only do these two actions help my channel a ton, but they also tell YouTube that you have really good taste. Thanks, and let's get back in. With these two ideas in mind, I think there's one final point to consider when we want to explain this heartbreaking robot phenomena. The one indisputable similarity that every story shares is their audience, relatively speaking at least. Believe it or not, the writers didn't make the brave little toaster for the youth appliance demographic, and they didn't make Sausage Party for the Costco food court to get freaky to. Stories are made for humans, and therefore almost always about humans, even if we're nowhere to be seen in the entire story. If it wasn't already obvious, these beloved robots are not real. These stories are fiction, yet the way they make us feel is undeniably real. There's nothing fiction about the tears we cried for them. So while robots don't feel pain, or dream, or love, I think we all know who does. Humans. These stories break our hearts because we know what it's like to long for something, to feel shame and remorse, to go against our instincts in the name of love. We know all of these feelings because they're all deeply human. Robot stories break our hearts because ultimately they are about us. This third and final point works in perfect combination with the two prior ideas that we've already talked about. The point of innocence only works because it relies on a human audience's sense of justice and kindness. The idea of going against their own nature is so powerful to us because it inspires us to do the same. If a robot can choose, so can I. If a robot can dream, so can I. If a robot can love, so can I. When the Iron Giant made the ultimate sacrifice, we didn't cry for the metal and wiring that was blown to bits. We cried for the innocence we saw in him, the ideas he represented, and the humanity we projected onto him. When we thought Wally was wiped clean, we cried for the curiosity and the selflessness and the humanity we thought we had lost. And finally, Roz. From the moment her robot eyes lit up when she first met Bright Bill, there wasn't a point onward where we saw her as anything short of a mother. When she literally ripped her heart out to protect him, promising that everything will be okay, we didn't just cry for the robot, we cried for every parent we saw and heard who has sacrificed everything for their kids. The saddest element of robot stories is the people we see within them. Robots break our hearts because they innocently pull at the strings of our morals, because they challenge our expectations, making anything seem possible, because they reflect our humanity right back toward us. If you guys enjoyed watching this video, even a fraction as much as I enjoyed watching these 3 movies, then I can sleep happily. I've got a lot of ideas in the works, and your support makes it possible for me to continue to create videos just like this. Subscribing and liking are the easiest way to show support, and if you want to go above and beyond, then check out my Patreon in the description. It gives you first access to my content and also means you'll get featured at the end of every video. Thanks again for watching. Until next time.